So, as Rohan said, I would tend to agree that the price which under the purchase power agreement with the grid would be a controlled price or contractual price between two units, while the one that is consumed by the mass of people, the market price, should be 7 rupees. And for that we also have a case law, Jindal Steel and Power Limited, Delhi Tribunal, 16 SOT 509. And now we come to the, so we have seen two brain teasers in this, that is close connection. Then we have seen grid price. Now we come to the main one, that when Z by X supplies goods directly to the electricity division and they are closely connected and he has not charged, is not the tax holiday increased to that extent, and therefore is not there a possibility to recompute the profits for the purposes of determining more than ordinary profits or not, because a closely connected unit supplied some goods without cost, and therefore is there not enough valid reason for the officer to recompute the income under section 80IA 10. And if you want, I'll just read 80IA 10 one or two lines so that we clarify this particular issue. Where it appears to the assessing officer that owing to the close connection between the assessee carrying on the eligible business to which this section applies and any other person or for any other reason, the course of business between them is so arranged that the business transacted between them produces to the assessee more than ordinary profits. So therefore, when Z by X would supply goods free of cost, where there would be a market value for the goods, however small they may be, there is a scope for the assessing officer to recompute the profits under section 80IA 10, and that's critical. And I think the other aspect is that the case laws, both Peaserman and Visual Graphics, 45 DTR 108 and Visual Graphics is ITA appeal number 2073 Madras 2011, there the owners of what is more than ordinary profits has been kept by the statute on the assessing officer. So that's also critical. These are two aspects which we have covered. And I think, friends, we have completed our case study, and I hope you have a great evening, enjoying the latter part of the evening, because whole day you are tired, bored, you listening to section 48 to be a specified domestic transaction, and our panel will take any questions you do. Thanks. Paresh, your first question.
When you are discussing about specific versus generally, then there are a number of situations. One is either one provision is applicable or another provision is applicable, or both provisions are applicable. There are situations where 92 is also applicable, 48 and 48 is also applicable. Then when you are dealing with specific versus general, can you not say that once the income or the computation provision has been dealt with, then you cannot go to the other provisions like we have 911 and 917. Once you deal with 917, the character of the income is specified in 917, you cannot go to 911. So such principle cannot apply between 40.
Yeah, so therefore, if you read the definition of section 92TA, it says specified domestic transaction other than international transaction. So if it is covered in international transaction, that specified domestic transaction, it will get covered under 92 and not under specified domestic transaction. The definition of 92BA is very clear. If you want, I'll read 92BA.
No.
Yeah, so Paresh, if it is covered under the provisions of international transaction under section 92(1), then that will prevail over section 48(2). You can please answer that.
I agree. In fact, we are facing another problem. There are shipping companies who have opted for domestic access scheme. Whether transfer pricing provision will be applicable or not, because both the provisions are specific provisions. So yes, of course, the courts have to come with some answer to this. But yes, even in a specific provision, we are facing this problem. So I think I agree with what Vishnu is saying.
I think that's specific provision will be there.
So the specific in the sense the statute is saying that other than international transaction, then it should prevail. Then you will go by 92, which is far wider, I believe, than specified domestic. Yes.
Case study 1, question 2. If instead of being company, entity B and C are LLPs, will the answer be different? A is company, B and C are LLPs, limited liability partnership. In that situation, A gets to participate in the profit of B and C, profit of C as well.
How does A participate in C? B will participate in C.
A is a company.
Right.
A is 60% partner in B LLP and B LLP is 51% partner in C LLP. Because in case of LLP, the post-tax profit gets credited to the account of the LLP partners. So that way, A gets to participate as beneficial owner or beneficial interest in the profit of LLPC. Will the answer be different? Instead of B and C being companies, if B and C are limited liability partners, the answer to question 2 will be different or same?
I would feel it would get covered if you are substantial.
So that will be covered.
But of course, you will do a deep dive into
Mr. Patel, looking for a different answer.
You are saying A is a company, B is an LLP, B participates, C is an LLP, so therefore the profit of C gets credited in B.
Yes.
So therefore, does A have beneficial interest in C?
Yes, substantial interest
Who,
in C, substantial interest.
so you are saying B is a partner in C.
Yes,
Can an LLP be a partner in another LLP?
Yes, sir, it can.
Answer is yes, correct?
yes.
But therefore, B is the partner, A is not the partner.
No, but the A gets to participate in the profit of C through B. Let us say the
So that's
profit
an indirect participation. I would believe it's an indirect participation. First, see, you are asking such, you are already prepared. Off the cuff, I can say this much that it is an indirect participation. Is an indirect
Yeah, it is
participation.
indirect partnership. You
So
can say that.
does beneficial ownership cover indirect participation? And my
So
answer
the
is
second
no.
part of the substantial interest definition says that 20% of the profit. First part says that 20% of the voting power. In case of companies, yes, that gets covered. But in case of entities other than company, we come to the second link of the substantial interest definition.
So, we read 48. When in doubt, read the law.
Not in doubt, then read the.
No, then always read the law. Okay, I'll read it for everyone's interest. For the purposes of this subsection, a person shall be deemed to have a substantial interest in a business or profession. In a case where the business or profession is carried on by a company, such a person is at any time during the previous year the beneficial owner of shares, not being shares entitled to a fixed rate of dividend, whether with or without a right to participate in profits, carrying not less than 20% of the voting power. In any other case, such person is at any time during the previous year beneficially entitled to not less than 20% of the profits of such business or profession. And the answer is no. Because it's an indirect participation in after tax profits.
Thank you.
That's my view.
Whether DDP is applicable for presumptive tax purposes.
Give an example.
For example, shipping companies which are based on managed tax.
So that is already our co-panelists has said it is before the jurisprudence. So why are you asking for SDT?
International TPs.
Yeah, so in SDT you will get transactions for tonnage tax. Will you get?
There is some transaction under the company like possible.
So you have to give an example. No, if you don't give me facts, how can I ask?
For example, it is away from services for one of the good companies.
So therefore the question before the for international transaction and SDT will remain the same. That if there is a presumptive rate of taxation, will the presumptive rate of taxation specifically allow whether the tonnage tax prevail or whether you will do disallowance under, even if you will do disallowance under 48 to B, will it change the tonnage tax?
First of all, whether reporting is required or not.
No, that is a secondary aspect. No, first we are on substance. If you were to go by the provisions of tonnage tax, would you require reporting? If it is required, you have to report. but then it will not get covered. So substantially in law it doesn't get covered. Please continue. I think my co-panelists are subdued, but doesn't matter. I'll take the question. We'll all take the question. Anyone else? Or call it a day? I can't hear you. Just give the mic, please.
Suppose the Mobile Healthcare Trust is a family trust and one of BK Modi, that is Nailand Fund, beneficiary of trust. Then it will answer will be different.
Is the beneficiary a member?
Yeah.
No. Is a beneficiary a member of a trust? Is the question I am asking.
Yes, sir.
He is not. He is only a beneficiary. Is a beneficiary a member of a trust? Answer is no. You can, same case law you can see. Darlini, you have a question? Yeah, take the mic.
My question is with regard to
I can't hear you, Darlini. Little loudly, please. From,
the last case study,
right.
for a power plant, capital power plant. So one is how do we said the grid price is the right price for the STT. So how do we consider it? Yeah, it's regarding the capital power plant.
Correct.
Right, the grid price is whether it's the right price, how you consider it vis-a-vis the power
So
comparable. And last is one more question regarding the electricity exchange, which is all these three questions. And one more question is how do we consider the overhead expenses, HO expenses, whether they are subject to SDTs? Your views.
Don't take it. I'll take it. You want to take it? Please.
No, I think your question is that why the 5 rupees that rate?
Why the grid price? Is that a comparable? And what adjustments to be made to it considering the power analysis, the risks, the functions and the assets which are involved as compared to a grid price?
No, so what we are saying is that the grid price is not the comparable price. What the grid sells to the end consumer is the
Right, so is that the right comparable vis-a-vis the power?
Yes, because ultimately it's the consumer price that we'll have to look at, because the state will be in a position to dominate and actually control the pricing, because they will
Right,
want.
but in my position as the captive power plant, what are the functions, assets and risks assumed vis-a-vis a grid?
But
that
ultimately
is
I have to
not
look at
comparable.
what is the market price.
No, I have to remove comparable price, right?
Yeah, but which is a market price? It's an arm's length price.
Arm's length
The
price.
state, the transaction between the ED and the state is not arm's length price.
Right.
It's a controlled price to that extent,
Right, but
although it's not related.
is grid the right arm's length price? Any adjustments to be made to it?
See, adjustment again, the quantum and all one has to look at it, but I'm saying the starting price would be
So
7
usually
rupees
the
and not 5
captive
rupees.
power plants which you have and a grid, how do you compare them? Is that 6 rupees or 5 rupees, whatever, is that the right price? And my second question is the new electricity exchanges which are functional now. Yeah.
The first point is that you are asking whether the price that is supplied by the captive power plant to the grid is a comparable
What
price.
grid provides to the mass?
Yeah. Okay, fine. So what grid is providing to the mass market is the market price, where any person, whether he wants to consume 1 unit, 10 units, 1000 units or a lakh units, has to pay that price. So that price is the market price as held in Jindal.
Right.
So that's the market price, and the market price is the arm's length price. Why? Because the market price is that price which would be allowable, or which would allow business to be transacted between two uncontrolled entities in the marketplace under similar conditions. So therefore, when a consumer purchases that units, that would be the price that would be prevalent. So now whether because of FAR you should make an adjustment is a technical question when CUP prevails. So in cup, what should prevail? Should FAR prevail or the market price prevail? That is something which law will evolve. And as far as the exchange is concerned, that exchange price, is it a better price than the price that is prevalent in the market, would depend upon facts and circumstances. Because the price that is prevalent in the exchange tends to fluctuate day to day depending upon peak hours, depending upon the season, and depending upon the state. So if you are in Gujarat, the price is different because the reason being Gujarat has got excess electricity. Probably in some other state you may have less electricity. So you have to look at the facts of the case. And I would still believe that the market price, where the consumer, where the unit himself is paying to the grid, would be the market price and would be the arm's length price. Because ultimately the arm's length price helps to achieve the market price. If you see the explanation, if you want, I'll read the explanation under ATI 8. What does it say? That the market price, if it is at arm's length price, under section 92F2, would be considered to be at market, there would be no disallowance. So therefore is not market price almost equivalent or equivalent to arm's length price? Is the question of law.
Last question.
Personally, both are different. Because I am a generation, have to call it the generation company. In grid we have generation company, distribution company, transmission company,
Yes.
and distribution company. So I think we have case laws and we go with that. But basically, I am not comparing like to like.
Exactly.
Yeah, so but the distribution company ultimately also has to purchase power.
Right.
So therefore it depends upon the case whether the grid also manufactures power or it does not manufacture power. If it is not manufacturing power, then you have to do some deeper analysis and you may have to make adjustment to the 7 rupees.
So you go back to generation company's price. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. The other problem is whether XYZ is allowed to sell in the open market. Whether the electricity regulations, do they permit to sell XYZ limited in open market? Because like state electricity is selling to the commercial users, are you allowed to sell to the commercial users? You are not.
And the answer is no.
Yes,
But
you are not.
therefore-
Then
therefore
if you are not allowed to sell to the direct consumers, then how can you take the consumer price as the market price? When there are limited consumers, you cannot go directly to the consumer, and here the electricity board can go to the consumer. Then the consumers are different, then the market is different, absolutely different. Then you have to make some adjustment.
So what adjustment? That is
Yes.
No,
So then you have to go by 5 rupees.
No. Fine. Fine. I think let's.
adding to this.
No, if you add 20 points, I think this will continue till 10 o'clock. But I will just answer. One minute, Rajesh, let me answer this. I'll take your question. Don't worry. I think it's like this, Ajit bhai. That perforce, what is the reason that the section 80I is on the statute? Section 80I is on the statute to say that there is not an unduly manipulation of accounts for the purposes of raising the tax holiday. So therefore, when the captive power unit is allowed to sell to its connected person under the purchase power agreement, that's the assumption that has been put in the case study. When he sells those units, does he not mimic a distribution company or the grid to the extent that he is allowed to sell to his related party? And if that related party would have gone to the marketplace to purchase electricity, its cost would have been 7 rupees. So therefore, if that cost would have been 7 rupees, would you deprive the electricity generation company, which is an eligible assessee under section 80IA, the tax holiday of selling units at 7 rupees? Is the question on the table. And I would believe that if you were to interpret a tax holiday as a beneficial provision for the purposes of encouraging companies due to fiscal policy in that particular industry, then I think Bajaj would prevail, no? Supreme Court to say that you should interpret the law wisely. Now that's only a proposition. It's up to you all to think.
This one last one on the apportionment and allocation of expenses.
I think I'll do one thing. I think the organizer is saying that Nalini, I'll take it off the table, offline.